Welcome to another edition of Niger Innis Presents The Trump Revolution, a part of the TvAbraham network. Well, folks, as we all know, we are in a situation where our friends, dear friends in the Middle East, Israel, are engaged in a hot war with Iran. And it has fascinating dynamics, not only overseas, but even here at home for the Trump Revolution, if you will. You now have what some are calling a civil war. I hope that it's a little bit more of a civil struggle between two wings of the MAGA nation movement. You have one wing that are very upset about us, potentially the United States, getting involved in this currently Israel-Iran war. And then you have another wing that think that we should get involved. It's not only our moral obligation to, but it's our strategic obligation to as well. Well, I can't think of a better guest to have on today to discuss this than the great Grover Norquist, one of America's most important tax reform and conservative and libertarian leaders in the country for the last, I don't want to age you, Grover, you look so young.
Many.
That's right, for many, many, many years. The president of Americans for Tax Reform. And we're going to discuss the Iran war, and we're also going to discuss the conservative movement and the potential that this war has to undermine the Trump coalition. Thank you so much for joining us today, Grover.
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts? Let me give you my thoughts at first.
Sure.
I was nervous as heck when Israel struck Iran because I had seen President Trump talking about, get to the negotiating table. Negotiations are going to go well. Iran is going to make a deal. And then before you know it, I hear Israel has struck Iran and a war has begun. I was quite nervous at first, but because I felt that actually today I had a ride, an Uber with a Bangladesh new citizen who wasn't a supporter of Trump, but says Trump is the only person that can stop World War III. And I kind of was a little nervous about it at first until it seemed to be a little bit of a good cop, bad cop routine, with Israel being the heavy hand and taking significant risks. And us coming behind it to pull the Iranian mullahs or the malacracy back to the negotiating table. What are your thoughts?
I don't know, because that's all a secret as to what the U.S. and Israel did together, what they did separately. Israel's perfectly capable of acting on its own, but it's in many cases wise to. They couldn't have done what they did without American military support. And they can't do the next thing without American military support. So I do hope that Trump has thought this through and has agreed, at least in theory, to both of those, because the Iranian threat to the whole region, to Saudi Arabia, to the oil fields, to Qatar, to the
UAE,
Arab Emirates, was a very serious thing and continues to be. But Iran without a nuclear weapon, Iran without serious numbers of missiles, without a serious air force, is less of a threat and may decide, why not be a rich oil country instead of a failed would-be hegemon?
Yeah, I mean, the Persian people themselves, Prime Minister Netanyahu made this point, and it's a particularly brilliant point, that his war is not against the Iranian people, or as I like to say, the Persian people. I say Persian because they have a civilization that's 5,000 years old. And they were an ally of ours before the mullahs took over. I'm not suggesting that we go back to the Shah necessarily, but certainly it could be better than what's happening now in Iran, where women are being murdered just for taking off the veil.
Well, one of the challenges you have is when we were quote unquote supportive of the Shah. When I was in business school, we had a 5-part case study of Iran. And it was about how the Shah had set up the Iranian economy as a state-controlled economy where the government made all the decisions. He didn't call it socialism, but he might as well have. And Harvard Business School was so proud of this.
Oh, wow.
Because all third world countries should do this. Well, of course, what happened is it made people poorer. It was very corrupt because the government was at every part of this, and it was overthrown. So when you have government controlled out of Latin America, governments do the same thing.
Certainly Venezuela.
They have tariffs so that they control what can come in. They set prices. They tax exports as well as imports. Argentina, for almost 100 years, did that and took one of the richest countries, and at one point the richest country in the hemisphere, more than us, and made it one of the poorest. So when America doesn't urge its allies, and I mean urge, like nudge, to become free market and more open societies, they lead them up to be attacked for being corrupt and then taken over by people who are religious fanatics or communists or ethnic guys.
But the foundation is the fact that the people do not have access to economic capital, to being entrepreneurs and economic liberty.
Yes, and a guy comes in and says, that's because, and then they demonize some group, or that's because we don't do this, and you end up with thugs taking over the country because they didn't have free markets, and then the thug has no interest in setting up free markets, and won't solve the problem, but they will stop you from whining about it.
And make the trains run on time for a day.
Yeah, for a while, trains run on time, not so much.
Well, Grover, there are a number of different directions that this war can go. I mean, that's what happens with war. You have the fog of war. You never know what could happen. It seems to me that the mullahs could very well, though, be in trouble. I mean, to me, ironically, it's not just the precision bombings of Israel, which were phenomenal, but it was the way that they assassinated several people around the grand leader. I forget what the title is called. It seems like the regime is in serious danger. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I mean, my instinct says it's a good thing because the Iranians will have an opportunity at real liberty and controlling their own destiny. But then I also remember 10, 15, 20 years ago, us having this same conversation with Iraq. So what comes after is the question.
Yes, and we don't know. There are probably 12 theories, and one of the 12 will be correct, and that person will go, I knew. Not sure about that, but somebody has to get it right if everybody's guessing enough times. We don't know how the ball will bounce. And Iran without nuclear weapons, and Iran without offensive missiles and offensive airplanes that are serious, is much safer for the rest of the world. And it may not solve Iran's problems, but it will make it easier for people in Iraq, Afghanistan, Turkey, at the Arab world.
And to engage, to invest, to bring the Persian people back into the community of civilized nations.
No reason that can't happen, but there got to be a dozen ways to screw it up.
Now, let me divert in the minutes we have left with you to domestic issues, because obviously there's a ripple effect on what's happening in Iran, throughout the Middle East, but it's actually even having an impact here in the United States, where you have people like Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, that are virulently angry at President Trump and believe that President Trump is a traitor to his own revolution that he started, the American First Revolution. And then, of course, on the other side, you have people probably like yourself, myself, maybe some even further hawkish, like Lindsey Graham. So here's the provocative question, if you will. I think that the outcome of this crisis that we have, that either it could potentially destroy the Trump revolution and mandate that he has, or he's going to be on Mount Rushmore because of the success of this vehicle.
That's interesting, because there is a divide that you see within the right on foreign policy. I tend to think Reagan had it correct, which is you want to have a very strong economy and a very strong military, and you use them sparingly, okay? When they occupied a part of Lebanon briefly,
Yes.
the
I
Reagan
remember
administration,
in the early 80s.
and took them out.
After the bombing.
As they
Yes.
said, we're going to leave in 6 months, and they took them out. There were people who thought they'd tricked us into staying forever and becoming the occupiers of Lebanon, which would have been
A disaster.
A disaster. Everyone would have ended up hating you. And they did knock off the dictatorship in the Caribbean. And so that...
The Grenada? I believe it was, yeah.
Grenada, sorry. Yeah, it's a small country.
Yeah.
In, out, done.
And then, again, nasty little, I mean, people don't remember, this is a nasty little communist down there that was playing footsie with the Cubans. And, us Monroe Doctrine folk that believe in the Monroe Doctrine could not let that happen.
No, it would have given an okay to Castro to take over any other island he wanted to.
Yep.
And that failed. And it failed. So we succeeded. Castro failed. I think the Reagan effort of supporting other people, the support that Trump in the first term and since then has given to the Ukrainian army. Now he's got them paying for the war. But a well-armed Ukraine that doesn't get eaten by Russia is the best defense for every country in Asia, because China will say, if the Americans wouldn't allow Russia to eat half of Ukraine, they will react to Taiwan,
of
or
course,
to taking a chunk of Vietnam or Laos or some of all of their neighbors. So I think where Trump has followed the Reagan peace through strength position and supporting armed resistance against dictators without occupying the place. We supported the Afghan resistance to the Soviet Union. We didn't occupy the place. We didn't send American
no nation
troops.
building there, right?
It's when we put troops there that it becomes expensive and people get unhappy.
Absolutely. Do you see a real danger in that split in the conservative divide? I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is another one who's in Congress right now. In fact, this situation's created strange bedfellows where you have Marjorie Taylor Greene and a couple of really solid Republican senators that are libertarian in orientation, allied with the squad. Talk about strange bedfellows. But just talking in terms of the movement itself, do you see a real danger? I mean, Trump created an extraordinary revolution politically in terms of the coalition that he put together. But coalitions are only as good for as long as they last. And does this conflict have the potential to put a real split in the movement and undermine the Trump presidency?
I don't think so. I'm not certain that much of the support for Trump in the last three elections, against Hillary Clinton was predicated on some of these foreign policy issues. I think it was largely
the border,
his support for
immigration,
a secure border, lower taxes, less regulation, and those were the issues he talked about. He did say not endless wars,
right?
But he was very loud about no Iranian nuclear power in the first election,
crystal clear on
2016. That. So, and that's not the same thing as we want to occupy the place or tell them how to live or tell them what religion they have or any of that stuff. Just we will be in the business of supporting people who want them not to have a nuclear weapon. Right. And in this case, that's Israel. But it could be any number of countries in the region that also have that concern.
Well, you know, I think about Iran that almost every day chants death to Israel, death to the United States. You know, my father used to say, Niger, you want to be careful. You prefer to walk softly and carry a big stick, not sell wolf tickets, as in the boy who cried wolf, if you will, because at some point those tickets get bought. And it seems to me that Israel has bought those tickets and believe what the Iranian mullahs have said for decades, which is their ultimate objective and ambition is the destruction of the state of Israel and then later the United States.
Yeah, well, the Israelis made their decision. It might be in part because Iran has also been supporters of the Houthi in the south,
Yes.
which have attacked Israel from there. They were the supporters of Hamas as
Yep.
well. So they may have viewed that as part of the fights they have with some of their neighbors or with pieces of their neighbors. I do think ultimately Ukraine is the bigger picture. A Ukraine which stops Russia from taking it over makes the next, if they take Ukraine, Putin takes Ukraine, then Putin says, why not every other country, 14 of them, that we let leave? Why not the stands? Do you think anybody in the United States can spell or pronounce many of the stands
Sure,
that broke away
sure.
from Russia
Sure.
that make Russia less threatening to the world because they're not there running those places anymore?
Right.
And I think it would be a disaster for Russia to reconstitute itself. It is now basically a child of China. They get to pretend to be independent and important, but China runs them.
Very interesting. Well, on that somber note, Grover, let's have our prayers for our friends in Israel and prayers for the entire region. Any loss of life is tragedy. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a
Good to
great
see you.
conversation. And that concludes another edition of Niger Innis Presents the Trump Revolution, a part of the TvAbraham Network. And I always close with what my daddy, Roy Innis, a great civil rights icon, taught me. He said, Niger, I want you to always operate with TLC. And he said, no, it doesn't stand for truth. It doesn't stand for tender love and care, rather. It stands for truth, logic, and courage. Well, that's the foundation that this program sits on and the entire TvAbraham Network sits on. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next time.